In 1967, at the request of U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, a team of analysts working for the Department of Defense, including Daniel Ellsberg, prepared a highly classified study of the U.S. political and military involvement in Vietnam from the end of World War II until that present day. The official title of the study was the Report of the Office of the Secretary of Defense Vietnam Task Force, though it would later become famous as the Pentagon Papers. Daniel Ellsberg had served as a U.S. Marine Corps officer from 1954 to 1957 and worked as a strategic analyst at the RAND Corporation as well as the Department of Defense. He had been an early supporter of U.S. involvement in Indochina and had worked on the preparation of the 1967, along with several other members of Congress. In preparing the study, which was labeled Top Secret, the analysis drew on classified material from the archives of the Department of Defense, State Department, and the CIA. Completed in 1969 and bound into 47 volumes, it contained 3,000 pages of narrative along with 4,000 pages of supporting documents. By 1969, however, Ellsberg had come to believe that the war in Vietnam was unwinnable. He also believed that the information contained in the Pentagon Papers about U.S. decision-making regarding Vietnam should be more widely available to the American public. After secretly photocopying large sections of the report, Ellsberg approached several members of Congress, none of whom acted on this. Some of the most critical information in the Pentagon Papers indicate that the administration of John F. Kennedy had actively helped overthrow and assassinate South Vietnamese President Ngo Dinh Diem in 1963. The report also contradicted official U.S. government pronouncements about the intensive bombing of North Vietnam, which the report stated as having no real impact on the enemy's will to fight. On June 28, 1971, Ellsberg publicly surrendered to the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Massachusetts in Boston, and admitting to giving the documents to the press, Ellsberg said, "I felt that as an American citizen, as a responsible citizen, I could no longer cooperate in concealing this information from the American public. I did this clearly at my own jeopardy, and I am prepared to answer to all the consequences of this decision." Many Americans were heavily protesting the Vietnam War at this time. They believed that the war was pointless and there was no legitimate reason to bomb the Vietnamese people. Ellsberg secretly agreed with the rest of America, and he began to rethink what he was doing for this study. He struggled with the secrets that he was analyzing over the time. He was working on this study and felt that the country ought to know what the government was keeping from its public. The constant struggle of his own morals and his devotion to the study weighed heavily on him. Many whistleblowers and leaks struggle with this problem because they know all too well the consequences of their actions. Ellsberg was no different with his way of thinking, especially since he has been so deep within the government and military alike. Ellsberg eventually realizes that the consequences are worth getting this information out to the public, and finally leaks out this valuable information. I think Ellsberg was correct in releasing the information of the United States' involvement in Vietnam. Through the Pentagon Papers, the American people could know exactly why the United States was getting involved in external matters. Ellsberg made a bold move in leaking this information, all while knowing the consequences of his action, but he refused to be scared off and did the right thing by exposing the military and political involvement. The government officials whom Ellsberg talked to did not do anything to help him, so he was correct in going to the New York Times and leaking the information through them. There was no support behind him in a government aspect, so he had no other choice. The government completely lied to the American people, and the Pentagon Papers were kept secret, even though they told the truth about the U.S. involvement in Vietnam. It was a shameful and untrustworthy way to analyze the military, and the public should know every aspect of the reasons that the country was at war. Ellsberg may have been put on trial for leaking this classified information, but he was correct in showing the public the secrets that the government had. Ellsberg went directly to the media in response to the lack of support from his fellow government officials and got the information out in a perfect way. The New York Times, Washington Post, and several others interviewed Ellsberg on his decision and reasons to release the information.
And to what extent did you decide at the time, this I want to give to the papers, this I don't want to give to the papers?
The only decision I made to omit from the papers was the four final negotiation volumes. The negotiations were ongoing, and I didn't want to be accused of being obstructive of those negotiations. I wanted to help shorten the war, not get in the way of negotiations.
In the end, Ellsberg got off and was able to live his life free of prison. He is now an activist and is involved with numerous anti-war protests.